Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. I am delighted to have you with me. The phone number, if you want to be on the program today, 877-973-7425. You can text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Should you wish to be on the program, I'm overwhelmed. And I need to, we'll get to the Supreme Court here real quick, but I gotta give a thank you to a listener. I don't want to get them into trouble or notoriety. I want to thank them. I am in the flagship station, WSB Today, and a listener from up in Connecticut sent me a package. And if you listen to the intro of the show, you hear the Apollo 11 countdown. And the listener, I've confirmed the authenticity. I wanted to make sure it was real. Sent me a piece from the Apollo 11 capsule, and I am just deeply overwhelmed. Just thank you very much. I just want you to know that I got it. I know you're listening, and so thank you very, very much for sending this. I got great listeners all over the country. Now, we must begin. I have done what you didn't want to do. I listened to the Supreme Court argument as I was driving to the studio today so that you didn't have to listen to the Supreme Court. They've only wrapping up. And I just want you to know that there is no way Donald Trump is winning this case. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your side of the aisle is. I don't care what your biases are. I listened to that case. When Clarence Thomas is asking critical, skeptical questions in oral argument of Donald Trump's lawyer, it's not a good sign for Donald Trump. And part of the problem is the hypothetical from the lower court. If you will recall, so the argument is that presidents have absolute immunity unless they are impeached, convicted in the Senate, and then they can be prosecuted over that thing that led their impeachment. Otherwise, presidents of the United States have absolute immunity. It's a nonsensical argument. Even ultimately, Trump's lawyer had to concede that for personal things not related to the office, the president of the United States can be prosecuted. Like, for example, Ulysses S. Grant got a speeding ticket in Washington, D.C. as president of the United States. What's remarkable is the lawyer for Donald Trump did not have a very good argument to the lower court hypothetical that was raised originally, and that is, can Donald Trump, as president of the United States, send SEAL Team 6 out to assassinate his political rival? Can he order SEAL Team 6 to do this? Sam Alito said he found the whole thing to be implausibly related to the powers of the president. The problem is Trump's lawyer argued that, well, he's the commander-in-chief of the military. He can lawfully order SEAL Team 6 to do things that he thinks are in the interest of the presidency. And if he has legitimate reason to think that his opponent is a threat to the country, then yeah. And then if he's impeached, then you prosecute him. Well, what happens if he starts assassinating members of Congress to stop an impeachment from happening? he didn't have a good answer to the scenario. He really did not have a good answer to the scenario. But then he said something, Trump's lawyer did, that raised a red flag to me that, this is what they're doing. Everybody's over here looking at the absolute immunity argument, but he said something. So there's a case that the U.S. Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia decided a number of years ago. Bridgewater, I believe the name of the case is. And I think I've got that wrong, but that's what I've got stuck in my head is Bridgewater. But in any event, it laid out a rule for what is and is not immune from prosecution for a federal employee. And essentially, personal things can be prosecuted. Things done plausibly as legitimate roles in the office cannot be prosecuted. And there was a rule, particularly read in light of a concurring opinion, there was a rule that could be established. And so what I think it was John Roberts asked Donald Trump's lawyer is, so what you're saying is that the prosecution can continue, but it's got to be within these bounds. And he said, yes, obviously there would be more decisions forthcoming, and there would be more litigation along the way. And the way he said it made me realize Donald Trump's lawyers know they're going to lose the case, and they're okay with losing the case. They're okay with losing the appeal. What they're playing for is more time. What they're playing for is running out the clock, and that's working. It made me realize what Trump's lawyer was essentially conceding is that they're okay with having no absolute immunity, but they want a rule where they can argue that Donald Trump's conduct was conduct as president, not conduct as candidate, and they want to be able to argue that rule in court. So then they have a whole nother cycle of appeal to the Supreme Court. So then they get past the November election. I don't think people on the left or right really appreciate that, and I think I'm right on this. I really, based on his arguments, that Trump's lawyer says he wants rules in place that can then be further litigated. They never had any intention of winning this case before the Supreme Court. They're not going to win this case before the Supreme Court. Sam Alito was skeptical. Clarence Thomas was skeptical. Neil Gorsuch was skeptical. John Roberts was skeptical. Good Lord, Sonia Sotomayor was ready to put Trump in the electric chair in the arguments. Ketanji Brown Jackson she actually struck me as very intriguing lines of questions and also very frustrated with Trump's lawyer. Elena Kagan. Donald Trump, if he gets out of this, I wouldn't be surprised to have a 9-0 decision. You may have a 6-3 decision, depending on how broad or restrained there is, but Donald Trump is not going to get out of this case winning. What he is going to do is he's going to get a rule because the D.C. Court of Appeals went too far. See, what's being appealed to the Supreme Court, what the argument today was about is the D.C. Court of Appeals essentially said presidents have no immunity whatsoever, which is also wrong. It's well-settled jurisprudence in the United States that presidents have immunity for actions taken that were plausibly based on their duties as president. So, what that means is, if the president financially benefits through a bribe, he appoints someone to office, but he got a bribe, he can't be prosecuted for the appointment, he can be prosecuted for the bribe. Because the bribe benefited him personally. Neil Gorsuch raised the concern that if the court doesn't get it right, what you're going to see is presidents giving themselves blanket pardons on their way out the door every 4 years, which I don't know that even works. My understanding of American jurisprudence, based on British jurisprudence before it with the king, is the power of the president flows out from him, not towards him. Therefore, he can't pardon himself because that's a power would flow back to him. That'll be argued another day. Can a president pardon himself? Richard Nixon didn't think he could pardon himself. Gerald Ford had to do it. I think there's some precedent there that'll be paid attention to, but that's besides the point. The point here is that the president of the United States doesn't have blanket immunity. And Trump's lawyer tried to argue that, but in arguing that, what it was very clear to me was they're just Biden time. They're waiting for the election. Their presumption is that he's going to win in November. And I know there are a lot of progressives who think he's not going to win, but pay attention to the polling. Now, we've actually really got to spend some time on the raw politics of this case at the bottom of the hour, the raw politics of the campaign trail, because even the Biden administration's administrative state is rushing rapidly to change rules in ways that suggest they think Biden's going to lose a second term. They're rushing so fast to get rules done. They're taking shortcuts that could actually undermine them if the Supreme Court gets involved. But in this case, I think that everybody's missing the core point here. They're running out the clock. They're trying to get to the election. Because if Donald Trump does get reelected, everything gets paused while he's president. Because even the Supreme Court agreed today that unless the president is removed from office, he can't be prosecuted. While he's in office, he's not going to be prosecuted. They're trying to get Trump back in office to hit the pause on this. And once Trump gets back in office, he could fire Jack Smith and dare Congress to impeach him. He could fire everybody, all the lawyers involved. He could fire them and put his own people in charge, who then have the cases dismissed. Donald Trump could do that, and then Congress could attempt to impeach him. Good luck. Donald Trump couldn't undermine the state cases, the Fani Willis case in Georgia, or the cases in New York, the case in New York, but the case in New York has fallen apart in and of itself. Alvin Bragg's entire theory of the case is now being ridiculed even by progressives on MSNBC. Fani Willis is undermining her own case in Atlanta. So good luck with those. But the federal cases, if Trump gets back in office, he could scuttle those cases. He's got the power to, and then dare Congress to impeach him. And by the way, I think if the voters of the United States vote to put Trump back in office, they're not going to care if he gets rid of those cases. Most of them see them politically motivated anyway. That's why Jack Smith is trying to rush particularly the classified documents case. That's the best case against Trump. It's always been the best case against Donald Trump. These other cases are kind of frivolous cases against Trump. In the Supreme Court today, Donald Trump's lawyer found no friends. They had to have left the court today realizing that when Clarence Thomas himself is asking skeptical questions of Donald Trump's lawyer, Clarence Thomas is not going to side with what Donald Trump wants. They may provide a better rule, which they should do. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals went too far. Even Elena Kagan hinted at perhaps the D.C. Court of Appeals might have gone too far in their rule, but they're not going to give Trump an immunity case. So what's now the next step? What happens is we have to wait for the Supreme Court. So it's April. The Supreme Court will probably not reach a decision in this case until the middle to the end of June. So Trump's case can't go forward until the middle to the end of June. And then once it does go forward, we have to see the state of play. Do the Supreme Court send it back to the district court? Do they send it to the Court of Appeals? Do they provide a rule? If they provide a rule, that then gets litigated by the judge at the district court level, which is then appealed to the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is then appealed to the Supreme Court. This case could be years before it goes to trial. The left sold Americans on a bill of goods that all of these cases could be rushed this year. That was never going to be the case. The reality is that all of these cases are going to take time. The Alvin Bragg case in trial right now in New York, the left itself is baffled by Alvin Bragg's theory of the case at this point. You're seeing less and less coverage of it, because the left realizes Alvin Bragg's case is not strong. They love the salaciousness. They love the dirt. They love the smears at Trump. But the underlying legal foundation of the case is really weak, and they know it. They're not going to get Donald Trump in court. They're going to have to beat him at the ballot box. And beating Donald Trump at the ballot box is no sure thing. Have you seen the polling? We're going to get into the polling. It's not good for the Democrats.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. The phone number 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the phones, I want to go to Sean out of the gate here. Welcome to the show, Sean. How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
Great. What's going on?
Huge fan. So just to qualify myself quickly, I'm retired from the military, 21 years, 3 combat operations. I was an airborne infantry guy. I've heard you make the comment a couple of times about the possibility that if President Trump was president and he had immunity, he could potentially call out SEAL Team 6, et cetera, to assassinate opponents. And I just wanted to bring up, as a matter of law, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which applies to all military, of course. There's a point in there which it's unlawful to obey an unlawful order. In other words, commit or kill innocent civilians, etc. So if you were to engage in that, you then would be court-martialed for war crimes or for crimes and either executed or put in Leavenworth, etc. for the rest of your life.
Right.
So I wanted to make that just as a point of law. I mean, anyone could probably do anything they wanted to, but as far as using the military specifically, it's just something I thought I'd bring up.
Yeah, look, that is a great point. And to be clear, this was the court's hypothetical, not mine. You're right. But, of course, if Trump can convince them that there is real intelligence that the person is a Manchurian candidate, maybe they'll go for it. But, yeah, they should question it. And, this gets to a larger issue, Sean, that you raise is the left has this sort of scenario now in their head that if Trump does get reelected, that he's never going to leave office. And, again, to your point, the Constitution says he would be president until January 20th of 2029 at noon, at which point he'd stop being commander-in-chief. And no member of the military, no person in the Secret Service, any of them would have to adhere to anything he said. He would be evicted from the White House. And when the left brings this up, what they're actually saying very subtly is that they don't actually have faith in America. They don't have faith in the people. They don't have faith in the military. They don't have faith in the Secret Service. They don't have faith in the Constitution. They don't have faith in the systems of law in the United States. And I do think that that's something that has to be brought up every time they bring up the scenario that, if you get Donald Trump, if he's reelected, he'll never leave office. Yes, he will. Even Trump has said he would only have 4 years. Now, the danger in that scenario, though, is that if Donald Trump gets in and he's in office for 4 years, does he remain loyal to the people who got him there or say, well, they can't hold me accountable. I'm going to do what I want to do, even if they don't like it? There's a danger there. And before you're dismissive of that, considering he went to bat to fund Ukraine, and his base didn't want that. We'll see how this shakes out over time. We'll see. Right now, I want to tell you about Old Glory Bank, and I want to highlight something for you. If you are looking for a home loan, if you need a mortgage, Old Glory Bank does mortgages. Why? They're a bank. They do car loans. They do mortgages. They do checking accounts, savings accounts, no fee, checking and savings accounts. But they also do home loans. So if you're looking for someone to provide a home loan for you, reach out to Old Glory Bank and see if it might be possible to do business with them. They've got great rates. You go to oldglorybank.com. You can set up a checking and savings account with them as well, oldglorybank.com. It takes you less than 8 minutes to get an account online. I've done the process. It is seamless, streamless, painless. It's great. I did it before they were an advertiser. I've been a customer of theirs for about a year now. oldglorybank.com. They're a great bank. They're customer friendly. They're conservatives. They're not going to cancel your bank account because they don't like you. They're just good people with a great bank, really innovative online, and they've got great rates for home loans if you need one. oldglorybank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Reach out to them. Tell them I sent you. oldglorybank.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, I mentioned this yesterday, and I want to play you this audio. This is from Bloomberg, their latest polling. And, well, it doesn't help when I click it and it's going through the wrong audio outlet. There we go. All right. I am a professional. Sometimes you just wouldn't know it. Here we go. Bloomberg News.
And a majority of swing state voters, Matt, see worsening economic conditions in the coming months. So that doesn't spell optimism for the Biden camp. Less than 1 in 5 respondents say they expect inflation and interest rates to be lower by the end of the year. And then more than 3/4 say that Biden is responsible for how they feel about the economy, which isn't a very good mood. And more than half said that he is very responsible.
Yeah, it's not good. And if you really want the sense of things right now, the Dow Industrial Average is down more than 400 points over concerns about inflation and over concerns about economic growth. Why? Because, well, GDP growth has slowed. This is from CNBC. U.S. economic growth was much weaker than expected to start the year, and prices rose at a faster pace, the Commerce Department reported Thursday. Gross domestic product, a broad measure of goods and services produced in the January through March period, increased at a 1.6% annualized pace when adjusted for seasonality and inflation, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had been looking for an increase of 2.4%, following a 3.4% gain in the fourth quarter of 2023 and a 4.9% increase the prior period. Consumer spending increased 2.5% in the period, down from a 3.3% gain in the fourth quarter and below Wall Street estimates. Fixed investment and government spending at the state and local level helped keep GDP positive on the quarter, while a decline in private inventory investment and an increase in imports subtracted. Net exports subtracted 0.86 percentage points from the growth rate. Now, I got to make a larger point here. This is really important for everybody to understand. When I talk about economic numbers and the government reports, and let's review this again so that you have the numbers. The growth rate was 1.6%. January to March on an annualized basis, adjusted for seasonality, adjusted for inflation, according to the U.S. government. The Dow Jones, the outside economists, had been expecting 2.4% growth. We had a 3.4% growth in the fourth quarter. Consumer spending increased 2.5%. It was expected to be above 3%. It wasn't. It's gone down. Now, every time I bring this up, a segment of listeners and of conservatives have concluded they don't trust the government about anything anymore, and the government's probably lying. And I keep trying to tell people, and they keep not wanting to believe it, that it's very hard for the government to rig these numbers. And I at least, even if you disagree with me, understand my case. We have private sector numbers and public sector numbers. The private sector does audits where they do expectations. So, for example, based on the private sector data, they expected higher growth, and based on the private sector data, they expected higher consumer spending than what we got based on those audits. Well, the federal government came in underneath that. So if the federal government, to help Joe Biden, wanted to game the system, they would have at least met expectations, and they didn't. So the result is a nosedive in the stock market. I'm looking right now. The Dow is down 470 points. The NASDAQ is down 200 points. The S&P 500 is down 43 points. It's a terrible day on the stock market, reversing a quarter's worth of gains in the stock market pretty much in a day. It's very hard for the American government to rig the data that they produce because there are private sector audits of that data, and the private sector and the public sector, they should align. Now, when the private sector comes in higher than the government, it's not the government rigging the numbers. If anything, you would think the government would want to do as good as, if not better, than the private sector, and in fact, they're not, and that's hurting Joe Biden because they're not. There's no conspiracy theory. And there's something else to pay attention to here. Something the government could have covered up if the government wanted to cover it up, except they can't because, again, there's an entire segment of private sector audits and private sector data that the government can't rig, unlike China. In China, all the numbers are made up because the private sector is the public sector. And there's a startling number in the data today that came out, and it's the reason the Dow has nosedived. Let me read you a key sentence from CNBC. Fixed investment and government spending at the state and local level helped keep GDP positive on the quarter, while a decline in private inventory investment and an increase in imports subtracted. Net exports subtracted 0.86 percentage points from the growth rate, while consumer spending contributed 1.68 percentage points. In other words, the actual private sector economy is in decline, and the only thing keeping us afloat is government spending, thanks to infrastructure spending on roads and bridges and things like that. That's not good. We are in a private sector recession right now, if this continues. It takes 2 quarters for this to bear out. We've got 1 quarter of negative growth in the private sector. Again, this goes to the polling and the numbers, and the Bloomberg quote about the polling is Trump's issues are baked in. The public knows what they're getting with Donald Trump. The public does not know what they're getting with Joe Biden. They were promised normalcy. They got wokeism. They were promised an economic recovery. They're getting an economic recession. The recession that people have been expecting appears to be coming, and the only thing that keeps it out of the data is the amount of government spending. And so this gets to the rigging factor. If you want to say, where's the government rigging it? Here's where you can say the government is rigging it. They're pouring money into the economy for infrastructure spending and construction to keep GDP positive. If the government wasn't spending what it was spending, GDP would have been negative. But that's not rigging. That's laws. Congress passed laws, the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure package. That money's being spent. The Biden administration can't rig the numbers. Can they try? Can they quibble? Can they nibble? Can they obfuscate? Can they revise? Yes, they can do all of those things. And every administration does. But the idea that they're wholesale trying to rig the numbers to paint a picture is largely impossible because of the private sector audits of the data that we can do. So don't buy into conspiracy thinking if you don't have to. A lot of people just want to believe the conspiracy thinking. A lot of people have looked around and they've seen in their personal economic circumstances, things aren't good. So when they hear the government data say things are good, they think, well, the government must be rigging the numbers. No, because the government numbers are a macro level, the economy as a whole. The government numbers are not the micro level, your individual household. You're comparing apples and oranges. But the macroeconomics can only diverge from the wholesale microeconomic level for some time. At some point, the macroeconomic picture begins to look like the microeconomic picture, and that's what's beginning to happen. The economy as a whole is slowing down because all of you have known for several months now you're having to continue to cut back spending because of inflation and costs. And now inflation has gone up, and interest rates are not going to come down. Why? Because the Federal Reserve's number one job is to keep inflation low, and they haven't gotten inflation to their target. And so their other roles to keep the economy going, economic growth, all of those sorts of things, they can't do because they've got to keep interest rates high to keep inflation going down. So the Fed has boxed itself in policies. The government has boxed itself in policies. And don't look now, but interest on the national debt is exceeding $1 trillion. And the way to offset that is economic growth. And we can't get that economic growth due to the stagflation that we're in Bidenomics. Joe Biden's economic policies have stagnated the economy. We have high interest rates, and we still have inflation, and we're having slow growth. And that is going to impact the bottom line of the nation. That's going to impact our economic picture. It's going to impact our tax revenue. It's going to impact income into Washington. It's going to impact our debt and borrowing and spending. And ultimately, it's going to push us off a fiscal cliff if we're not careful. If the Fed cuts rates in June, and no one expects them to at this point, if they did, it's a warning sign they're worried about a recession. And that's not going to help Joe Biden, the warning sign of a recession. The economic news right now is not good for Joe Biden. Again, all of Donald Trump's foibles, all of Donald Trump's problems, I think they're baked into the polling. People know they're going to get some level of chaos with Donald Trump, but they're not going to have Joe Biden. And for all the people who got tired of Trump being in the White House, for all the people who got tired of the mean tweets, for all the people who got tired of Trump's antics and behaviors on social media and the like, at this point, they're beginning to bank in the fact they would rather that than what they're getting from Joe Biden. That's the thing that has to keep the Democrats up at night. The American public would far prefer the angst of dealing with Donald Trump than dealing with the reality of Joe Biden. And there's not an easy messaging angle for the Biden administration to pivot around that. People's favorability of Donald Trump is rising as Joe Biden's favorability is going down. And the number one issue for the American public when surveyed is immigration. The Biden administration is not fixing that. The number two issue for the American public after immigration is the economy. And the economy, the economic picture, the worries of consumers is actually not good and getting worse. All of the data is pointing to Democrats epistemically convinced there's no way Biden can lose. And that's exactly how he's going to lose. They're being so convinced he can't is what's going to cost it for Joe Biden. That's actually going to be a very, very funny thing to watch Democrats process as we head further into the campaign season. Can it change? Yes. Republicans have a lot to be alarmed with, too. Look, Joe Biden wins 6% still among people who voted in 2020. There's a lot of antipathy for Donald Trump. There's a lot of dislike among voters for Donald Trump in the likely voter category. But if Trump can mobilize the American middle class who don't often vote to go vote for him, he wins. And he wins on the economy. It is the economy stupid. It always has been. The Biden administration decided that they could break the bank on climate change and on the wokes and on the cultural shifts, and the American public would give it to him because he wasn't Trump. And the American public has concluded they would rather have Donald Trump now than Joe Biden. And I don't know that you can change their minds at this point with the economic horizon the way it looks. And with the economic horizon the way it looks, you and your business need to be responsible with your money and spending and saving money, and you can with Stamps.com. If you go to Stamps.com, you click on the microphone and you put in Eric, you can start shipping and saving today with Stamps.com. They'll send you a free digital scale and some free postage. You have no long-term commitment. You have no contract to sign. You can cancel at any time, but you'll save up to 89% off post office UPS rates. If you do a lot of shipping, yourself personally or for your business, Stamps.com can save you money, and they can arrange pickup at your home or your office of your packages, so you don't even have to go stand in line. You can avoid all the knuckle draggers in America. You never go stand in line to ship a package. You have them come to you and pick up your packages, and they ship them for you. It saves you money. It saves you time. It's a real convenience, and you can get all of your shipping supplies from Stamps.com. So you don't even have to go to the store to buy the stamps and the labels and the boxes and all the bubble wrap. You get it from Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone, put in Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You can get shipping and saving today. They'll give you the free digital scale. They'll give you some free postage, and you have no long-term commitment thanks to Stamps.com.
I'm James McComb, reporting live from home in my bathrobe and slippers. Tonight, we're talking Dunkin' Polar Peppermint Coffee. Gene's here with the latest. Gene, do you copy?
The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. Wherever you are in the United States of America, First Liberty can help your business. If you're buying a building, you're building a building, whatever you need, First Liberty can help you. You need $250,000 or more to buy a franchise or buy out a business partner. Those are the deals they specialize in. First Liberty Building and Loan. Go to firstlibertyga.com. Again, they can help any business in the continental United States and all 50 states, Alaska and Hawaii as well. firstlibertyga.com. Now, let's go to the phones here. Susan, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. You was mentioning that basically the numbers on this quarterly report would have been even worse had it not been for all the government money being pumped into the economy through infrastructure projects. What about, Joe Biden just finished buying a lot of votes by forgiving student loans, and all those hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever the amount was, those people who had those loans now have X amount of dollars freed up that they weren't using on their payments. And so in a way, it's going to pump money. It's being used to pump money back into the economy using those people. What do you think?
That's not a bad assessment. He can have some money pumped in. Now, the problem here, though, is the way that the government will wipe out those debts, and a lot of those people, they haven't been paying their student loans anyway. They've been pumping the money in, so it'll be some uptick, but a lot of them just kind of never started paying them again once all the deferrals and forbearances went away from COVID. Some of them have. That will free up some of their money. But if we're honest about it, we're talking a few 100,000 people, and that's not going to be a massive economic stimulus for the country, given just the relatively low number of Ivy League anti-Semites that got bailed out by the Biden administration. However, it is a thing. Speaking of the Ivy League anti-Semites, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, went to Columbia yesterday, and boy, the Democrats are furious with him for having done it. This is Karen Finney. One of the Democrats worked for Obama, worked for Hillary Clinton.
So first of all, let me say, I think what Johnson did was pretty shameful, because that's throwing gas on the fire. That's not actually trying to say to the university, how can we help you solve this problem? And that's what we should be doing. We should be more concerned about how do we help our campuses create a safe environment for not just our students, all the people who work there.
He's throwing gas on the fire. No. Yes, she's upset about it because it highlights what's going on campus. In fact, Erin Burnett had Mike Johnson on her show last night after this. Listen to this.
The main thing they were chanting was Free Palestine. How is that anti-Semitic?
Well, what's anti-Semitic is that Hamas endorsed this protest today. Within the last 2 hours, they issued an endorsement statement and heralded the students here and said, this is the next generation of leadership in America. If you're getting endorsed by Hamas, that's not a good look. It's not a good sign.
I would agree. When you're getting endorsed by Hamas, probably not a good thing. It is remarkable the level of argument, nuance, and all of that has gone into this sort of stuff. It's a bad look. Can we just acknowledge it's a bad look when Hamas is endorsing your actions and these protesters don't care? I actually, when we come back, want to spend a little bit of time on this because the actions of these protesters, I don't think is getting enough attention as to what's actually happened and what's going on. The actions of these protesters, they did something. Let me just put it this way. I'm going to tease this out a little bit. The protesters in the last 48 hours, particularly the last 24 hours, they crossed into a level of evil that they don't even realize they crossed into. And I want to actually highlight for you that level of evil. And it wasn't from the foreign-born students, although they participated. It was from the white American kids, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white American neo-Nazis who think they're on the side of the oppressed, engaged in a level of depraved evil that hadn't gotten enough attention.